My name is Brad Alexander. I'm the Private Lands Program Manager with Georgia Department of Natural Resources, and they've asked me to come and talk about a lot of the different opportunities for prescribed fire on private lands in Georgia. First, I thought I'd start off with a little bit about our own program. We've been around for quite a while. We started in 1995. We're currently have the most positions we've had in a long time. We've got 8 biologist positions that work for DNR that are mostly based and work in close partnership with NRCS, the Natural Resources Conservation Service. And we've also a fairly new partnership with Quail Forever that's been able to increase our capacity to work with landowners to improve properties for wildlife with 5 more positions with Quail Forever. And that's our map there. Most of our staff are based in South Georgia, but we do have a few and are growing our capacity in North Georgia. And we work with quite a bit of landowners that are looking to improve their property, over 400,000 acres last year. As Tim mentioned early, Georgia is a fantastic state at using prescribed fire. We average over 1 million acres a year in most years, and we hear those numbers a lot in this meeting every year, and we might grow to be, it's another 1 million acres. But at a national scale, we're a huge player in the prescribed fire community. In 2019, there were about 10 million acres done in the country. So our 1 million acres are a big deal nationally. So we're really awesome at it. Unfortunately, we still see declines like this in a lot of species. This is a lot of songbirds and quail that are dependent on fire-maintained ecosystems. And we've been seeing these declines for a long time. And it's not just songbirds. Turkey populations are declining. I'm sure if y'all were out in the woods this spring, you heard less turkeys. You got to see less turkeys. And that's not just you as a bad hunter, that's everybody in the state. We see very low numbers of poults per hen, leading us to believe a lot of the same things that Gio was talking about that survival of that youngest age class is really being detrimental to the population as a whole. And then, as Dr. D'Angelo talked about earlier, there's definitely something going on in North Georgia with deer. We're seeing a 68% decline in hunter participation. And while you may not be a deer hunter, that's an important fact to note. If we're seeing a decline in deer hunting, that means a decline in folks that support us as natural resources professionals, lack of there's a huge amount of funding, especially for us as an agency, that come from hunter participation. And so seeing these declines is a huge deal and can really drive what kind of conservation we can do in the state. And the reason is that even though we do 1 million acres of burning a year in the state, in reality, there's a lot more available to us. I did a little GIS analysis and looking at using forest inventory analysis data, looking at different forest stand types, and there's over 16 million acres of upland forest types that are, not all of those are exactly fire adapted, but many of them are. And so when you compare that 1 million acres to 16 million acres, you can start seeing that even though we're great at it, there is more that could be done, and that lack is why we're seeing these declines in these populations. When you look at, and again, that's as you look at the amount of available upland forest species, and that's just forest species, forest habitats. There's other habitats that would also be fire adapted that would make that slice of the pie smaller. So seeing that as a need, our director Ted Will formed a committee within WRD, the Prescribed Fire on Private Lands Fast Action Implementation Committee, and I want to change that fast action to slow and steady, because there's not, we're talking about a big thing here is increasing the amount of prescribed fire, and there's really, unfortunately, there's it's a long, steady goal that we've been working towards and need to continue to work towards. But these are some objectives he set out for this committee, to thinking outside of the box, to trying to identify focal landscapes so that we can see impacts on wildlife populations from these works, and then identifying ways that we can better measure our impact. And really, the only, as this committee was formed and we started meeting, we realized this is nothing that WRD can do on their own. This is nothing that GFC can do on their own. It's going to take all of us in this room to think together and figure out ways that we can, slowly work to increase capacity over time. We also, as we started getting into this and looking really close, and you guys do an awesome job. There's just a ton of great opportunities for landowners out there. This Georgia Guide to Conservation Resources is a publication that WRD has put out for quite a while. But a lot of the more traditional things, the NRCS programs, the Farm Services Agency programs, the GFC programs are outlined in there. If you can get a copy on our website, we've got a few copies out at our table. But that's a great source of resources for some of those more traditional things that you think about. But there's also a lot of really new, innovative, and great things that are happening. One of the best, I think, is the Chattahoochee Fall Line Prescribed Fire Cooperative. R.T. Lumpkin, Nature Conservancy, Lou and Creighton, and others are really doing some amazing things on the Chattahoochee Fall Line, really concentrating prescribed fire, working with landowners to build a cooperative. His landowner field trips, I think, are a very innovative way to train landowners. They have landowners sign up and have other landowners come out and visit these landowners as they're doing burning. So they can learn, landowners can learn from other landowners. I think that's a very innovative thing to do. Golden Triangle and other RC&Ds with grants from NRCS and others have developed a series of prescribed burn trailers. These trailers, more than I can remember right now. There's a lot of them around the state. I think they had funding for 7. And the Prescribed Fire Cooperative and the Fall Lines had funding for some more. But these trailers are something that landowners can rent from the RCDs, and it has all the tools that they need. There's a picture of an ATV in this one, but they also have things like fire rakes, drip torches, backpack blowers. The loadout on each of these trailers is a little bit different. Some of them have like big pull behind blowers to clear off fire lines. But these trailers, I think, are really important and key, and we really need to work as a community, a prescribed fire community, to promote these and let landowners know that this is a tool that's available for them, that they can use and really help them implement prescribed fire in a safe, effective way on their property. The Georgia Sentinel Landscape, Susan French is back there. She's got a great pilot project going on in that landscape, providing an innovative cost share program to reach those landowners that more traditional cost share programs may not fit well with their objectives. The Tall Timbers has a number of private lands fire initiatives. There's a new report out that just came out, the Prescribed Fire Liability Report for Georgia. This is a great source of information for all kind of fire practitioners to get them familiarized with prescribed fire liability, legal issues and insurance and things. Just a number of really great things going on. The online burn permit system, I think this will be a great tool into the future to help us measure where fire is being implemented and where we need to focus our efforts more. The Southern Fire Exchange has a number of great videos on their website. You can find a lot of these a lot of this information at the Prescribed Fire Council's website, garxfire.com. A lot of these resources are there. Longleaf Alliance has got a great new video about getting started with Prescribed Fire that I'll show at the end of my talk. And NRCS continues doing great things with Prescribed Fire. 197,000 acres of Prescribed Fire in 2020 contracts. And that 197 acres will be implemented over the next couple of years through those contracts. But just a huge impact there. So some things that WRD is doing, through this committee and other sources is ways that we're trying to work to increase Prescribed Fire. One is we've partnered with Quail Forever through their arm of Habitat Forever to form a habitat team. Habitat team. They'll be based out of the Albany Nursery, WMA, in southwest Georgia. We've hired a burn boss for that group, and we'll be hiring 3 more technicians. Their main focus will be helping landowners in this landscape, especially in these high priority landscapes outlined here in yellow, that we feel are real important for quail populations in southwest Georgia and other, a lot of those other songbirds that I showed in that first slide. And they'll be focused, heavily in these limited landscapes. And we hope through time that we'll be able to really focus our efforts around, some really core habitat areas, and really make sure that landowners in those landscapes have the resources that they need to be able to implement Prescribed Fire at the right time, in the right way, to really see maximum benefits at a landscape scale. They'll be, full-time. We've got funding for 3 years for this right now, and we'll be soon looking for, starting that search for funding for that in the future. But I really feel like this habitat team idea will be great for making sure that fire is implemented, supporting GFC and other efforts in these counties. This model has been used in other southeastern states and Arkansas, and they've actually found that it increases demand for vendors and other resources, so that there's forestry consultants and stuff in Arkansas that really support the habitat team in Arkansas, because it's actually driving more customers for them. It's getting more people familiar with fire, and more people are seeking out other help to help them implement fire. We've also been working to increase our training and education. I mentioned the habitat team again, because that'll be a big part of what they do. It's not just going out and doing fire, but actually teaching the landowner how to do fire, how they did fire on their property, helping to get those landowners set up to implement fire on their own. We've also, helped with looking for ways to help with more learn and burns. These are events where landowners can come and actually participate in a fire, during a training session, and get familiar, for those landowners that have never done it, get familiar with that. The Bobwhite Quail Initiative bought a supply of PPE resources, some helmets, some gloves, some eye protection. So as y'all are planning learn and burn events around the state, reach out to us. We can help you get some helmets and gloves and eye protection for the participants, to help them cover those costs and help keep folks safe as they're participating in these programs. And we're constantly looking for ways to increase participation in training opportunities. I talk Ken's ear off all the time about how we can increase capacity and help get more folks through the Georgia Prescribed Fire Manager training. I think that's a real important way that we can get folks familiar and safe with Prescribed Fire. We've also got a new position within Wildlife Conservation section that's transitioned into reaching out to landowners and training and helping increase the use of Prescribed Fire. Erin Court, she's back there. She's based down in southeast Georgia, but we'll be working statewide, and part of her duties will be looking at ways that we can help promote Prescribed Fire. And we're also, from a financial standpoint, looking at ways that we can augment existing cost share programs. I talk with RT and Chris Howell with GFC quite often about ways that we can allocate more resources to those state level cost share programs. And we've got some funding that if you're looking for a new plate, this bobwhite quail support wildlife license plate goes to support our private lands program, and it's a great source of match funding for wildlife conservation in the state. It's state level funding, so it doesn't have many strings attached. It does have to go towards quail restoration efforts, but we can use that money and hope to magnify it and multiply it, using it for match for other cost share programs and other conservation programs. We also, knowing that this is not a WRD only effort, we've had a partner meeting last fall, and we had over 30 participants from 18 organizations join us on a Zoom call. We were hoping to do that in person, but COVID reared its ugly head again last fall, so we had to move towards an online meeting. But we were, the goal of that meeting was to start thinking about how we can, as a state, as a set of partners in the state, how can we set our goals for prescribed fire on private lands? We do a great job at that 1 million acres, but how do we set a goal so that we can start thinking for a bigger number? We also thought, had folks begin thinking about landscapes. Where would different organizations in the state like to see us prioritize outreach and education so that we can start seeing those landscape scale impacts? And then also, talking about resources. How can we share resources, increase our sharing of resources for outreach? I did want to talk a little about this idea of landscapes, and this is a map from if y'all have not looked at it, the Southeast Fire Map. You can Google Southeast Fire Map. It's just a fantastic tool. They're looking at ways of mapping prescribed fire use across the Southeast. I will say that for Georgia, and some of you guys in the room probably noticed there's not a whole lot in northeast Georgia especially. Unfortunately, the way that they did their GIS analysis, it cuts off a line running pretty much from the bend up there to the northwest in Georgia. But for most of Georgia, this is a fantastic resource to kind of map where prescribed fire is implemented. We do 1 million acres. This is data from 2018 to 2020, so this would be somewhere around 3 to 4 million acres of prescribed burning. And when you start mapping it out across the state, it gets kind of hard to focus in on areas. You do see some definite areas around Fort Benning, around Fort Stewart, and southwest Georgia, and we know those are areas where we do implement a lot of prescribed fire. But thinking about how can we work to focus some of these efforts from a wildlife standpoint, some of these burns are less beneficial because it's 50 acres surrounded by thousands of acres of not very good habitat. So how can we try to focus some of these efforts and start seeing landscape scale impacts? I think this is just super important for us to think about because Atlanta and Columbus and Savannah and Macon aren't getting any smaller. They're going to continue to grow. They've grown exponentially in the last 20 years, and they are predicted to continue to grow. And if we don't carve out areas of the state and identify areas of the state and help build that culture of prescribed fire, a strong community culture of prescribed fire in certain areas of the state, as development continues to grow, we're going to start losing areas of the state where we're able to implement prescribed fire. And so I think it's important for us to think strategically about where we want to really focus our efforts and build communities where, in this community, we do prescribed fire, where landowners are helping landowners implement prescribed fire, and landowners are expecting other landowners in those areas to implement prescribed fire to improve wildlife populations and other resource concerns for everybody. Um, so again, going back to this, it's a huge ask. There's just a lot of land in Georgia that could use prescribed fire. Historically, we all know most of Georgia, burned pretty frequently. And so thinking about how we get back to that, the GFC does a fantastic job, but they're limited resources. WRD's limited resources. So we need to think about training landowners. A recent survey, the National Prescribed Fire Use Report, identified a lot of things that are limiting. And I would argue that 4 of those top 5 reasons that are impediments to prescribed fire, we could address with training. We could address with training more landowners, with more technicians, with more vendors to help landowners. We could increase capacity. We could teach landowners how to implement prescribed fire and not worry in a safe way and not have to worry about or to manage their smoke. We can teach landowners about Georgia's good prescribed fire liability laws, and we can increase public perception. If we create those communities of prescribed fire, when there is a prescribed fire, we're going to get less calls wondering about why their yard's all smoky for a few hours in the afternoon. So I really feel like training landowners is an important part of doing that. There was also a recent study, the Southeast Prescribed Fire Training Needs Survey, and landowners, they identified that there was a lack of opportunities to participate in training, and there was a lack of access to those opportunities. So they recognized that these are landowners that wanted to learn more, but didn't see opportunities, and when there were opportunities, it was hard to participate in them. So if we work together and think strategically about how to format training, how to increase opportunities for training, increase training around the state, increase training through video networks and other online and innovative ways, I think we could really start meeting some of those needs and answering some of those questions that landowners have about how to implement prescribed fire on their properties. Again, it's partnerships. It's not one thing. It's not one of us that can do. And also, think that we need to start thinking about how we can increase the number of folks that are at the table. Fill in some of those gaps. Invite University of Georgia Extension. They're here today, but some of them are here today. But increase participation from that group. Increase participation. It's great to see Georgia Soil and Water Conservation Commission. Get those folks on board. Get Fort Valley State Extension on board. Have them come to meetings and have them participate and help teach their landowners that they're working with on how to implement prescribed fire and broaden that tent so that we're reaching anybody in the state that wants to learn more about prescribed fire. So how do we reach more landowners? I have a lot of ideas, but I know everybody in this. There's a lot of folks in this room that have a lot better ideas than me, and so I want to use this talk as a request to let's figure out some ways that we can work closer together. We do a great job as a state, partnering together, but I really think, if we're going to start getting past that 1 million acre mark, we're going to have to really start thinking strategically about how we work together as partners in the state and really hammer down some of these goals and think very strategically about how we do this. That's my contact information, and I did want to share a fantastic video from. I'm going to forget. That's right. Longleaf Alliance and partners from DNR and a lot of other folks helped put together this fantastic video, and this is exactly what I would encourage us to think about doing more of is figuring out ways how to put these things together and get them into landowners. Get landowners pointed to them on YouTube to watch.
y'all, I'm Susan French with the Longleaf Alliance, and I'm so excited to be talking about prescribed burning on private lands today. The benefits of prescribed burning are well documented and well known, but some landowners need further technical assistance, financial assistance, or training to feel comfortable and ready to burn their own property. Let's talk with some landowners today about their personal experiences.
I've been burning for years, decades now, and it's still exciting. I still love it. It's still scary, but yet satisfying to get through. We cover all the bases. We try to do everything according to the burn plan and according to the rules. And I believe if you are prepared for anything, then if you have something happen, you're hopefully prepared to handle it. But we do very careful burning and under what we hope are perfect conditions.
As a landowner, prescribed burning your property every couple years is a winning proposition for everyone. Prescribed burning creates many benefits, including reducing wildfire risk from grown-up rough, creating wildlife habitat, controlling insects and disease, managing competing plant vegetation, and recycling nutrients.
I'm Lucretia. I'm a grandmother. I've been burning since 2013. I've taught my grandchildren how to burn, and their friends how to burn, and if they can do it, and I can do it, you can too. My advice to the landowner when they want to burn, they need to learn about it. Be familiar with burns. It's nothing to be frightened of. And if you want to take a course, there's a lot of the courses out of Waycross, Dahlonega, Longleaf Alliance. They give conferences, they give weekend field trips so that you can see fires and learn about it. But you need to learn about it before you do it. You can't just walk out and start a match and do a burn. You need to be familiar with it. So I suggest people to read, contact your local NRCS or your forestry service, and let them teach you and help you along for that first burn. And once you get your property to a manageable state, you yourself can burn. It's a very easy thing to do. You just have to make sure you burn under the right circumstances.
Smoke management is one of the main aspects of safety and liability during prescribed burning. Smoke management involves choosing to burn under weather conditions that don't affect sensitive areas, such as schools, hospitals, and major roads. You can learn more about smoke management techniques by taking the Certified Prescribed Fire Manager course through the Georgia Forestry Commission. Special care should be taken when burning around structures on your property, such as a home, by raking additional fire lines and creating an additional black line by burning. Other vital planning techniques for landowners include preparing a burn plan to organize important elements like objectives, weather parameters, and equipment needs, having a burn unit map to outline fire breaks and hazards, finding and interpreting fire weather forecasts and measuring on-site weather, and understanding the different emission patterns used in different fuels, topography, and weather conditions. Important resources can be found in the comment section below, including information from the Longleaf Alliance and our friends at the Southern Fire Exchange.
When you start your burns, you call the forestry department, and they will tell you whether or not it's adequate to do a burn. They will tell you whether or not the smoke dispersion will be right, whether or not there's going to be any inversions later on in the day, which would cause the smoke to stay on the ground, which would make the highways very unsafe. They'll make sure that the humidity is right and all conditions are right for a burn. And once you get your permit and you have all your safety equipment together, you start your burn. But when you see everything burning at first, it's sort of frightening when you first see it. You see fire, you see smoke, and you wonder if it's going to do any damage to your trees. But the next day, the ground's going to be black, it'll be like scorched earth. But then give it a few days, you're going to see little green plants coming up, and it'll be violets, or it could be other wildflowers that grow in your area. And then it makes you feel good. And then a couple months later, you'll start seeing ferns. And soon you'll start hearing quail, or you'll hear turkeys in the background, because now they've got the habitat they've been wanting.
Burning during different seasons of the year means you'll see different plant responses. Burning during the growing season can really help promote the growth of wiregrass, which is a valuable native species.
I'm Jerome Murphy, and I have been burning longleaf now for 27 years. One reason that held me back for years of growing season burns was the concern of the difference in temperatures, versus dormant season in the wintertime when it was really cold. And I was really nervous, and I've known about this probably for 10, 15 years, so to speak, and it took me a while. I was kind of like jumping off the high dive, is the way I say it. I was just scared, but once I've ever done the first one, I feel very comfortable about it. I had the Georgia Forestry Commission come out and help do the burn, and everything went great. Far beyond my expectations, very much a transition, and I see a great amount of change in my property now. Different plants and the suppression of hardwoods, which initially that's what I wanted to do without doing any kind of site prep or anything. We wanted to control hardwoods, so that was initially what I was trying to accomplish. And so now we'll be doing this on my own now again.
Making a budget is vital for the planning process. We will help you understand the cost of burning, insurance, and possible sources of funding assistance. There is also a rentable burn trailer with all the tools you need to get started.
I'm James. I'm just getting into the pine tree business. Gonna be planting some longleaves this winter. A very affordable resource that the Georgia Forestry Commission gives local landowners is the fire trailer here for an inexpensive cost. Inside the trailer, you have hand tools up front. You have access to a blower that makes a fire break for you, and also water bags that you carry with you to put out fires.
Financial assistance is available to private landowners through programs like the Georgia Sentinel Landscape Pilot Project. This program provides cost-share funds to landowners to implement prescribed burning, plow fire breaks, and obtain burn plans.
You can either get cost sharing through the NRCS, which is very easy to do. You contact your local NRCS office. When we had our burns and used the Georgia Forestry, they would pay for about half of it, and we would pay for the other half. But it comes back full circle. When you burn, you're increasing the value of your property. Your trees grow bigger, your land looks better, you have wildlife, and it's aesthetically pleasing, yet it's also increasing the value of your property.
It's just very exciting and very rewarding when you see how it can change the landscape and improve the habitat so much.
We're so excited that you're ready to join the fire family in the southeastern U.S. Contact us directly at the Longleaf Alliance so we can connect you with the best resources for your area. Also, make sure to follow our social media pages on Facebook and Instagram for the latest updates on trainings and events.